You are Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
Welcome into a live edition of Locked On Hornets. I'm Doug Branson. I'm joined by the host of Locked On Hornets, Walker Mail. Walker, how you doing? Good, and we've got a special guest as well, radio voice of the Charlotte Hornets, the man himself, John Foke. What's going on? It's a Foke Friday. Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. So we do these live rewatches every Friday, and this Friday we are going to be looking at the 1997 NBA All-Star Game. And for the Charlotte Hornets uninitiated, maybe we have some national viewers here on the live stream. For those that are uninitiated, this is the year that Glenn Rice absolutely exploded in the NBA All-Star Game as a member of the Charlotte Hornets and ends up winning MVP. So this should be a fun one, Walker. So we've got a lot of basketball to watch, so I want to hit play here in just a moment. But, John, can you give us some memories of watching this game or hearing about this game all the way back in '97? Do you remember anything about this game? Googs! Googs! Yeah, and we're going to get plenty of KG stories from John as we continue this live stream. That's why. That's why we wanted all the KG dirt. We'll get to that in just a moment. Let me give you some fast facts on this All-Star Game before we hit play. This was the 47th edition of the All-Star Game, but it commemorated the 50th anniversary of the NBA. It was played in Cleveland, Ohio. The national anthem for the USA sung by Brian McKnight. We went all the way back to one. It was amazing. Yeah, he play in one of the All-Star challenges, like the Celebrity Challenge? I think he was. Okay. I'm gonna look that up in just a moment. All right, most votes by the fans, of course, the guy that's on the screen right now, Michael Jordan, 2,451,000. Second most votes, Charles Barkley with 1.8 million. So there you go. Then Sean Kemp with 1.7 million was third. We're in the soft middle era of Sean Kemp basketball. I got you. Okay, if you gentlemen are ready, we will all hit play at the same time. If you are watching at home, I'll put a link in the show notes to the video that we were watching on YouTube, and you can sync your play at 33 minutes and 33 seconds. Are you ready? All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1, play. And we are off. I'm going to turn the volume down just a little bit on this broadcast, even though it is the great Marv Albert, Bill Walton, and Gukas, I think. Gukas? He's on the call as well.
And Marv is just giving him the business the entire time.
Yeah, quintessential Bill Walton would be great. I'm mesmerized by some of the players. I think I just watched Vin Baker get a rebound. This is a great all-star game with just random all-stars. Terrell Brandon starting. There's Vin again. You can't stop Vin Baker. You can only hope to contain him. Look at these guys, man. I just like the obscure all-stars that we have in this one.
I'm going to move this video feed so that people
wait
can
till they go to the bench.
Oh, man, I'm excited.
Well, Shaq. So I think Shaq's coming off the bench for the West.
I think Shaq was injured.
Oh, okay.
Because there were a number of guys, like in looking through the box score, there were a number of guys that you're wondering why aren't they on there, and they were injured. And so KG, my KG, not your KG, Doug, Kevin Garnett he was an injury replacement for Shaquille O'Neal. And there's a bunch of guys that were out. Barkley, who got the second most votes, he was out. So
Drexler was injured. Alonzo Mourning, then playing for the Miami Heat, he was injured, and Patrick Ewing was the starting center for the East, but he was injured. Joe Dumars and Chris Webber, the replacements for the East, and Detlef Schrempf, Chris Gatling, the Gat Man, and Kevin Garnett, your injury replacements.
By the way, I think this is going to be the second made. Yeah, we just saw Glenn Rice hit 1-3 and then come right back down the court and hit another one.
Did Tom Gugliotta have a nickname that you liked, John, when he played for the Wolves? Because I like calling him Googs, but I don't think that was actually a nickname for him.
It was.
Actually. Oh, good.
It was a nickname that a lot of people use for
Googs.
Him. And you got to remember, Kevin Harlan was calling Timberwolves games during this time, and so he had the Googly Oogliotta. He had that call. Yeah. He called him Googs. Oh man, there were some great. I had a chance to catch up with Tom Gugliotta. I think it was 2 years ago when the Timberwolves were celebrating their 30th season, and I had to ask him about the barbed wire tattoo, right? Because who wasn't at that time, especially when Googs was such a stud for the Wolves? We were all drawing that in Sharpie on our arm, and Googs was just laughing and said, at the time it was pretty cool, but now he kind of wishes that he didn't have that because his daughters or his kids are talking about getting tattoos, and they're like, "Dad, you had one."
Yeah, hard to defend it.
Speaking of hard to defend, Glenn Rice right now in this All-Star game starting to heat up. I think he hit a few shots in the first quarter, but there he goes again, splash from three. So Glenn Rice, this was his. Oh, Jordan likes it. This was his second straight All-Star appearance for the Charlotte Hornets. In this season, he scores 26.8 points per game, 4 rebounds on 47% shooting from three. And there, he shouldn't have. I don't know what he was doing there, driving, trying to score on Karl Malone. Just shoot threes, Glenn. You were an expert that season.
Man, that motion is straight up. There's not a lot of moving parts. That's just robotic and smooth all at the same time. Those numbers are crazy that you just went down the line with him. Watching him play in this game, you can just tell how smooth he is, man. Glenn Rice was money.
And he's so much bigger than I remember. You just see him rise up over Sean Kemp, over Karl Malone, those guys. He had great size to be, as you said, Walker, to be as smooth a shooter as he was.
John, we were watching one of the '98 playoff games when the Hornets faced off against the Bulls, and I made that same exact comment that Glenn Rice, I just don't remember him being that big. I think because he was known as such a sharpshooter, I think we had this sort of guard mentality about him, but he was definitely good size for the small forward position.
How do we like the wearing your own uniform away and home version?
Love
do we
it.
like this, or do we
Love
like
it?
No, I do too. I'm a fan.
Yeah, I was especially as I was trying to figure out who was on the floor. It made it a lot easier to see, okay, who was good at this time in a Sacramento Kings uniform, or the Terrell Brandon in a Cavs uniform. Like, who could that be? I think it made it easy to identify these guys.
If I had to choose one jersey to get, I think I'm choosing the Terrell Brandon Cavs jersey. I'm just a huge fan of that look. I love that retro Cavs jersey.
Well, Walker, you know how I feel about 90s NBA jerseys. I think it was the golden era of NBA jerseys.
Well, they're the best.
Because
they're pretty clearly the best. Right?
Well, yes, there were some classic looks, but there were also some super weird looks, and I was totally into all of the super weird 90s cartoon NBA jerseys that they were pulling out. So I love just getting a look at the spectrum here of great classic jerseys and weird NBA 90s jerseys. And I get why the NBA would want to like make up a jersey for the All-Star game, because it's a separate jersey and you can sell those and that makes sense. But I just love this idea of everybody wearing their own jerseys. It's just so cool looking.
Wait until Joe Dumars and Grant Hill come out, because those are the cartoon horse Detroit Pistons jerseys.
Well, and that's what's weird about all of this is that, so you're seeing guys from the early 90s that dominated, but the jerseys didn't live as long as the players did. And so now we're transitioning to the new jerseys where Hakeem goes with a different Rockets jersey. We're seeing the dark green Sonics jerseys for Kemp and Peyton. You mentioned the Joe Dumars Pistons jersey. I mean, look at that Hawks for the Mutombo. I guess that's the only jersey he might have played in. It was the 90s ones, but it's funny, the players that dominated in the early 90s on their way out, but still getting the All-Star votes, they're wearing what we consider a new era of basketball. They're wearing those unis, and I love it. I love every minute of it.
Look at that move. I mean, even at that stage of his career, Hakeem, that was incredible.
Well, so there's a lot of talk, John, right now, on the heels of this Last Dance documentary, maybe some criticism from some younger fans about taking Hakeem Olajuwon first and not taking Jordan. I mean, it's obvious, the one you gravitate towards is Sam Bowie to the Trailblazers, but some people criticizing the Rockets for not seeing the greatness of Michael Jordan. But gosh, I mean, I think people just forget how great Hakeem was. And I know, Walker, you're a huge fan of Hakeem.
Of all time. Yeah. He's insane.
I look at Hakeem and I remember, and I might date myself here, but the NBA Superstars video that we used to have, and it was just a series of highlights, and Hakeem was on there. His song was like, it was by Kool Moe Dee, and you get to see Hakeem like running the floor, leading the break. Like, the spin move was incredible. He could pass out of the post. His footwork was so good. He was like, I look at Hakeem and you see like what Kevin Garnett basically becomes, like the way he could step out, hit that baseline jumper, and the spin moves inside and the fallaways and stuff like that. Like, Hakeem had that stuff, and then KG was able to build upon it with that same type of footwork. So, I mean, it's really hard to argue with at that time, especially with the emphasis on big guys and how important they were in the league at that time, to say that like you would have taken Jordan over Hakeem at that moment in time. Maybe now, looking back on everything, you can make that case better. But at the time, there was such an emphasis on big guys that it's hard to argue with it.
Well, it's one, as Glenn Rice just torches this quarter as we're watching it. But
and let me just stop you there, because there's Dave Cowens, current coach of the Charlotte Hornets at this time, watching Glenn Rice. Because I just want to say something. Glenn Rice has now had 2 dunks in a row in this quarter, and you, I think, said that you were questioning whether Glenn's MVP was really that meaningful because all he did was shoot threes. And I've seen him get I saw him try to jump out on a pass. I mean, he's playing defense. He's dunking the ball. He's trying to get the guy on his hip, boom, slam. I mean,
that
this
was
is
great defense by a young Kobe. No, it was excellent. It was
No, that was Eddie Jones.
excuse me, Eddie. Yes, that's right. It was Eddie Jones. Yeah, that's great post defense. It was a great point. That was great for you to interrupt me just to point the great defense.
I just
by
needed to
Kobe
say
Bryant.
that.
My point about Hakeem was you bring up KG, and that's exactly, I think of him in the same light, John. Anytime you have the fun debate of create your starting five, I go Hakeem at the 5 and Kevin at the 4. I do that. I love both of those guys being on my team, being crazy big, crazy long, mobile on the perimeter. You know, Hakeem absolutely translates to this era. You put him in this era right now, and Hakeem is just as dominant to me. And you could even probably stretch him out and probably teach him to shoot threes a little bit more, but he could knock those jumpers down. And having Hakeem, I remember, just being a student of the game, looking at all the stats, having been at one point top 10 in points and number 1 all time in block shots. It's crazy value. And yeah, it's probably one of the best compliments that we have of Hakeem is nobody really knocks the Rockets for taking Hakeem. Maybe these young dudes that are watching The Last Dance now, like you brought up, Doug, but nobody kills the Rockets for drafting Hakeem, a top 5 center of all time, because he was so good. People knock Portland for taking Sam Bowie ahead of Michael. Okay, fine. But people don't knock him.
Oh, look
really
at Glenn
for the
Rice
Rockets.
in transition again, getting to the bucket, doing more than just shooting 3-pointers. This is an MVP performance,
Wasn't
ladies and
that I said
gentlemen.
he was shooting threes. You said that he wanted to come out with a statement. And it's him just throwing up some shots. They go in because he's awesome. And then you're acting like he wanted to come in on a mission. That's all I was saying at the time. You're misconstruing things
By the
that I
way,
said.
Goog's on the floor right now. He's hustling. I want to just say this. Like right now, I don't know what you guys are seeing, but I'm seeing two teams playing hard right now in the third quarter.
Yeah.
They didn't wait till the fourth quarter. I mean, these teams are going at it right now.
There was the Terrell Brandon rip of Stockton earlier in this quarter, and then guys like earlier we saw Grant Hill jumping out in the passing lanes, and like these guys are closing off angles and stuff, like actually playing defense and playing with a certain type of pace that you don't normally see in an All-Star game. And just wait until it does get to the fourth quarter, because back in this time, like these guys, they actually were playing defense. This turned into a really fun game to watch.
Oh, Kemp inside. Kemp can't get anything going right now. Does get the foul. The East would outscore the West 40-27 in this quarter. So this is really where the East made the run. We'll have to see if the West can try to get back into it. But that's the guy right now. Rice is just heating it up from inside and out.
And there we go. I'm glad we see the graphic. Yeah. Wow. Trivia question. Yeah. Who did he beat? Hal Greer.
Hal Greer. Let me look up some Hal Greer stats.
You know, the cool part about this too is as Glenn is breaking these records, because they were celebrating the 50th season and they had the 50 greatest players there, a lot of these guys are in the stands. And so Hal Greer, they showed him, he was at this game. He was there. Wilt Chamberlain's there. I mean, all the greats are there, and they actually go and cut to these guys and talk to them about some of these records that they were a part of that are falling during this game.
You think people go up to Hal Greer and ask him what it was like to be at the game Glenn Rice broke the All-Star quarter scoring record? I wonder if people ask him that when they see him on the street.
He's like, listen, records are made to be broken, okay?
Yeah, everybody, I just want to be a normal human being. I wish all this paparazzi wasn't on my doorstep every time I exit. It's got to be tough.
Anyone want to take a stab at
11.
Anyone want to take a stab at Hal Greer's nickname?
It probably should be known. I mean, we're not talking about some scrub. I don't know what his nickname is.
High Gear Greer.
No idea. High Gear Greer. All right.
I like it. I mean, there's Will.
Not as good as a stilt.
No, that's a better nickname.
We don't have great.
Never Nervous Purvis.
Oh, that's good. The Iceman.
No, that is great.
Gervin.
Further proving the point that they were better back in the day.
Who has the best nickname in
tough, 'cause
Charlotte
now-
Hornets history?
Grandmama?
Grandmama. Yeah, that probably is number one for sure.
Okay, that game was fun, John.
Well, John just blew it out of the water.
Fun game. I appreciate it. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, does Diddy count?
Oh yeah, B Diddy. Sure, totally. That's
All
number.
right.
That's number 2 probably.
The Monster Mash.
Oh, now you're
That's
playing
your
my
point, Doug.
hits. Mash, yeah,
Yeah,
Mash or Monster
Good.
Mash, totally.
Mm. Oh man, there's fun, Kemp.
Yeah.
Oh,
He was
Jordan
so
back on the floor.
strong.
Oh man, yeah, I probably am a little early on the transition to the fat Sean Kemp. Maybe I owe him a little bit more respect this year. Man,
Ahmad and Wilt.
Yeah, those are great. Man, are we talking about? It's probably just a couple more years that Wilt's alive, right? If this is '97, I think it was about 2000 when he passed away, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow, what a way to bring things down. Just talking about Wilt's
Yeah.
demise.
Yeah, let's talk about more player deaths.
Yeah, I want to give us some more. Want to give us some more nuggets on that.
Yeah. Reckless speculation.
Hey, Evander Holyfield in the audience, 2 rows up.
There we go.
Yeah.
Legends. He's still with us.
Thank you for that. Yeah, no. Yeah. Part of his ear's not with us anymore, but he's still with us.
We were talking about like Hakeem and KG and some of those guys. And during this broadcast, when I was taking a look at it, Marv was kind of talking about, hey, not a big fan of the big guys. They slow the game down, and this All-Star game is so fun because you've got, a lot of smalls, sort of small ball basketball going on. And then Walton brought up Hakeem and KG and some of those guys, and it's really fun to think about, like, what we're starting to see is the beginning of those versatile bigs. We're really like at the cusp of it, as you guys talk about, like this transition. You're seeing more guys like Garnett come into the league, Chris Webber in there, and with what he could do in the low post, but also facilitating out on the perimeter. And so this is like a really fun, I found anyway, really fun to kind of see the blend of the 90s back to the basket type guys, but also this influx of some of these versatile bigs and how that skill set changed.
Well, and I think that's getting some attention now because of the Last Dance documentary, because the Chicago Bulls, I think we may have talked about this in the rewatch or when we were on the podcast with you, John, or, when we talked about it later or earlier, whatever. You look at Tony Kukoc and Dennis Rodman being on that Chicago Bulls team. And, Tony Kukoc absolutely there's Davis brothers out to try to guard him, and that might have been the difference in that series that the Indiana Pacers took the Chicago Bulls to 7 games. And Dennis Rodman obviously could defend in a lot of different areas, not to mention Michael, Scotty. It's just a ridiculous defensive team. I think we're starting to kind of go back and say, okay, yeah, I know what that looks like. Even in 2020, there is some of what I recognize being played even all the way back in the late 90s.
Man, Michael Jordan missed 2 straight jump shots there. That's kind of those were his shots. This might be one of his worst. I'm trying to look these stats up on his All-Star games. This might be one of his worst All-Star game performances.
Real quickly, as we're talking about jerseys quite a bit, because hello, they're awesome. Minnesota, how about their jerseys right here, represented by Googs and Kevin Garnett? John, I always thought one of the more underrated jerseys ever, at least in my opinion. It's the black Timberwolf jerseys with the green trim. I absolutely love those jerseys. What were your favorite Minnesota Timberwolves jerseys over the years?
I really like these ones, and I've got a couple of these light blue ones. The black ones that you're talking about with the green trim were great. I love the trees. They have the trees around the neckline. They have the trees on the bottom of the shorts. But really, a couple of years ago, we went back to the original, like 89, early 90s uniforms, the ones with Shep, the big wolf logo on it. And it was so fun to see those come out again because it was so long ago. When I first started with Minnesota back in 2007, they were just transitioning away from this. So we had this style for a number of years. But when you go back to those kind of royal blue with the green and the old Shep logo, like those were my favorite. But I love the ones that these guys have on now. The intro that went along with it, like to this era of this cartoon wolf running through the snow and stopping and howling at the moon. Like it was such a cool intro that they had that really came about when they switched to these uniforms. And that's like, as far as, what I remember most about going to games as a kid, it would be these uniforms and that intro that came along with these uniforms.
So this was indeed MJ's worst All-Star performance within his prime years. I mean, if you discount the first few years, he did win the MVP in '88 when he scored 40 points in the All-Star game, but he only scores 14 on 5 of 14 shooting in this one. This is a year after he won MVP in '96, and he would win MVP in the All-Star game again in '98, and then participate twice more in '02 and '03. But yeah, 14 points on 5 of 14. It was a perfect storm for Glenn Rice to come in and win the MVP in an off year for MJ.
Well, yeah, maybe. I mean, I remember talking about it at the top of our stream. Maybe it was Michael Jordan who was at the scoreboard because Michael was not playing when Glenn Rice was playing, if I'm not mistaken, right? I mean, that would make sense. And so maybe it was Michael saying, hey, Glenn Rice has a chance at the quarter scoring record.
I don't know why. You're just trying to cut the legs out from under this amazing performance by Glenn Rice. I don't know what does Glenn Rice owe you money? Like, what is wrong with you?
I'm just saying, I thought it was cool. Michael,
you hear this, John?
Glenn Rice to have his moment.
Are you going to allow this Glenn Rice slander?
It's not slander. Get out of here.
Sorry, I am just amazed at some of the guys on the floor. Here's Christian Laettner facing up on Kevin Garnett.
Yeah, I was particularly taken aback by, I believe, Latrell Sprewell, who just gave the pass.
Yeah,
he was a coach's selection.
What do
wasn't
we think
voted
of
in.
Those Warriors uniforms too that Spree's got.
They kind of confuse me. They look like Lakers jerseys. Like maybe it's the SD feed, but
yeah, I'm going to guess that Sprewell, by the way, wasn't a PJ Carlesimo selection. I'm guessing he wasn't coaching. I'm just going to take a wild guess. One of my favorite Spree quotes, by the way, is when he played for the Timberwolves. Remember when he was in a contract negotiation, John, and Sprewell said, I got to be able to afford to put bread on the table. Didn't he say that in a contract?
He said, I got to be able to feed my family.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and that man, it's the other day I watched the re-air of Game 7, Minnesota and Sacramento to advance to the Western Conference Finals. And it was so just wild to like sit there and watch that and kind of remember that time. And then in the next year or so, how everything kind of fell apart because it was Spree in a contract year, and then Sam Cassell coming off the injury. And he was also up for a contract within the next year or two. And that team just never really got a chance to run it back, You think about if they would have been healthy, if Sam Cassell would have been healthy, going up against that Lakers team with Shaq and Kobe and Gary Payton and Karl Malone and kind of the dysfunction that they were having, and they ended up losing in the finals to the Pistons. Like the window was there if that Timberwolves team would have been healthy and maybe stayed together for a year or two to make a run at the West, because there was some openings there.
How many more? I mean, man, we only got probably about one or two more good Wally years before did he go to Boston and that trade with, or what happened with, how did Wally exit Minnesota? Zerbiak?
Wally, I believe, got traded to Boston, possibly for like Justin Reed. I would have to look that up. That was a while ago. But yeah, it was just like then things started to change quite a bit. There was the Mike James era, the Ricky Davis era, like just trying to bring in these guys that could help take some pressure off Garnett, who was carrying the load night after night after night. I got to look up that Wally. I'm not sure how that one played out or when it did.
Yeah, not to bring you on to make you do our research for us, but it's usually Doug's job.
I'm looking up more Hal Greer stats.
Of course.
The high gear Greer.
As he's known.
Got to get Glenn back in this game, man. He's got to get the record for most points in a half.
Yeah, we get more Glenn, right?
Like not done with this Jordan guy out of here. Who's he? little Steve Jones graphic here. Cyber Snapper. Everyone knows that nickname of Steve Jones, the Cyber Snapper. By the way, that sounds very odd. The Cyber Snapper.
Yeah, not 2020 nickname.
That sounds like the title of an episode on Investigative Discovery. The Cyber Snapper.
I love the www.NBCsports/ It's like this game doesn't feel that long ago, but the way, and especially listening to Marvin and Bill talk, like the way they discuss uh, the the internet and how they're using the internet and stuff, it's just hilarious. It makes it feel so dated.
Don't forget the https:// or your computer will explode.
I know that because the paperclip at the top corner told me so. God, KG looks like a
mismatch.
baby, man.
Oh, but he sees Spree.
He does look like a baby.
Yeah, man.
Well, we saw the rare KG huge smile on the free throw line. I don't remember KG with the big smiles.
I just love the way he was playing defense in this game. Like he was bodying up Christian Leitner. Mm-hmm. He gets after Glenn Rice a little bit.
By the way, I don't know if you caught that on the audio, but we just heard Marv Albert carefully say the word shot chart, which I contend, and John, you can either deny this or back me up here. I contend that shot chart is the most dangerous thing that an NBA announcer can say, because it really, if you say it too quickly, it can come out as sharp.
So we were talking about the Timberwolves and Dave Benz, who's the TV announcer for the Timberwolves. You guys probably saw this on social media. That happened to him. He used the term "shart" and in regard to shot chart.
It's amazing.
And Jim Peterson was like, "Dave, I don't think we should use that." And he's like, "Dave, I think we're going viral."
It's over. The moment's done.
It's like the Houston, we have a problem. Dave, I think we're going viral.
Yeah. Done.
I love this, Scotty. Like, is there a more classic Scotty dunk than that one right there?
Yep.
The reverse, kind of rock the cradle, throw it in, and then just stone face back the other way. Like, no big deal.
Man, I'm excited for every single episode we're going to get of Last Dance, Doc. You know, it's funny that we were talking about, Scottie Pippen and the contract more than Michael Jordan, right? Like that was the big talking point. It was Jerry Krause, the hatred that both Jordan and Pippen had for Jerry Krause, and also more on the Pippen side of things we were discussing because he was so underpaid. I just find it fascinating. The most anticipated documentary that we've had probably since the OJ series, the OJ doc that we got from 30 for 30. And here we are where there's nothing else to watch, and we're not talking about Jordan after all of this. We're talking about Pippen. I thought that was pretty interesting.
I think the storytelling that they've done so far in laying out really the arc of the season has been fantastic because, like we've talked about before, over the course of that year, there's so many things that 22 years later are just not top of mind because you just don't wade through the minutia of an 82 game season. And so I think the way the backstory from even, they're showing Michael there, but from his rise from high school to college to the NBA to eventually, becoming Michael Jordan versus Mike, laying out that background was fantastic. And then the Scotty stuff, it's like, it all helps paint a picture of the entirety of the season and gives kind of lends itself to why that season was so dramatic and why, you want to focus 10 hours of content. And I'm sure everyone would love for 10 extra hours of content about that season.
You know what I want 10 extra hours of is Chris Gatling posting up in an all-star game. That's what I want.
Well, and airballing. Gatling always ends up on the list of sort of obscure all-star nods. And in this season, 96-97, he played 44 games for Dallas, averaging 19 points per game and 8 rebounds per game. But then after this all-star game, he would get traded to the Nets. So he would not be wearing that Dallas jersey for much longer. His only all-star season, unsurprisingly.
Yeah, the Chris Gatling era turning into Dirk, I believe, the following year is when Dirk was drafted. I believe that's right.
In total,
I wonder. Go ahead.
I was going to say in total for the 97 season, Gatling averaged 19 points, but then in 98, that went back down to 11, and the previous year, 11. So I don't, we have this thing on the podcast, John, we call it having a little stretch. It's like these NBA players that for 3 or 4 seasons in the middle of their career just explode kind of out of nowhere. And they had a little stretch, and then they go back, go back down to their normal averages. I don't think that counts. Just the one season at 19 points per game, I don't know if we really count that as Gatling having a little stretch.
Need more than that, I think.
So we got the Glenn Rice thunderous dunk and the Spree thunderous dunk.
Yeah, that was fun.
Another
good
Glenn
back and
Rice
forth.
dunk.
Yeah, impressive. No, it was.
Just admit it. Just admit it, Walker. Watching this has totally turned around your perception of how Glenn Rice acquired this Most Valuable Player award.
I've always liked this. I gave it credit. Go back and listen to. I know you don't listen to when I speak. I understand that.
Oh, there was
But
a Lionel Hollins sighting.
There what?
Young.
Was that Alvin
Was
Gentry?
that Lionel Hollins or Alvin Gentry?
I think it was Alvin Gentry. Yeah. There you go, Doug. Both of us on that one.
It was a quick thing. And listen, it's the SD feed. It's the SD feed. I mean, and Alvin Gentry's the hometown guy. I should know that one.
Yeah, no, App State grad, I believe.
Shelby.
Man, go back and listen. I gave credit to Glenn Rice's All-Star Game MVP. Go back and listen to the bracket episode.
I'm not going to do that. I'm going to believe what I want to believe about it, which is that you were pooping on Glenn Rice's MVP for some reason.
I was not.
The only MVP that Charlotte Hornet has had in the All-Star game.
This stretch right here is fun because they're trying to get Glenn the record. Like, it's obviously everybody knows. So every time down, they're trying to just force feed him to make something happen. And this is the difference maybe in the All-Star game then versus the last couple.
Oh, they got KG on him.
Yeah, he doesn't want to let him get it.
No, look at him, competitor.
I just love it. Like, let the man get the record. Wilt's sitting right there. It'll be fun.
Well, KG's showing off for MJ. He's like, this is what MJ would do if MJ wasn't on his team.
Oh, no.
I mean, even the Gap Man comes over and and they're going to put Vin Baker at the free throw line at 42 seconds left in the All-Star game.
I think this happened again later. I think Paul George had a chance at the game record, and Greg Popovich said, no, do not allow him to get this. And Paul George eventually would come up short. But I think that happened in obviously a much later All-Star game.
I just think this is great. Like, it's so fun watching these guys compete for something like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Glenn is talking to him.
Yeah.
They're talking. Let me have it, KG.
Please.
Yeah, it's funny seeing those Sonics uniforms. You think back to just because we were talking Last Dance, but the finals with the Bulls and the Sonics. And I know you mentioned, look at Terrell.
Oh,
Awesome.
You know what they used to call Terrell in Minnesota? Stop and Pop.
oh, I love that. That's a great
Stop and
nickname.
Pop right there.
That was a great nickname. for him.
S&P.
That's a good one.
Stop and pop.
Yeah,
They're trying to get him open, and KG is just not having it.
Yeah.
Oh, he's pulling on him. Oh, foul.
So
Foul
they
off
fouled
ball.
him.
How many off-ball fouls are there in the All-Star game? You can probably count them on 2 hands.
Yeah, they won it.
Oh, Jordan,
MJ
he's
won.
upset.
I think that was on the Terrell Brandon 3.
Oh, yeah, it probably makes more sense. So where are we at with Glenn right now? What's
He
the
could do it
counter?
right
you know?
here.
He's tied it right now, 23 in the second half, and this one will set the record.
There it
There we
is.
go.
The record. KG
Well, so I love
KG couldn't stop it.
The record was Wilt and Tom Chambers held that at 23 and a half.
That's awesome. Tom Chambers.
It's a great pairing. Wilt and Tom Chambers.
2 of the Best.
That's the ball game. Glenn Rice gets the record. He'll lift the trophy here momentarily. Hey, John, have you had a chance to call a record-breaking performance like that? Do you recall?
I did get a chance to call Rebecca Brunson in the WNBA became the league's all-time leading rebounder. So there was that. I've called a couple of in the WNBA finals. We had rebounding records. We've had like single game scoring records for like franchise scoring records. But nothing, to the magnitude of an all-time, all-league single game record. But the rebounding ones are hard because it's like sometimes you're following along and every time you're saying, okay, they're 5 rebounds away, they're 4 rebounds away. But sometimes like, does a tip count as a rebound? How do they score that? And all of a sudden you look down, you're like, I missed the moment. Like,
right.
Those ones are tough.
What was that? That had to be Sylvia Fowles, right? Like, how often was she in that category?
So Syl in the 2017 finals set the record in back-to-back games. So I want to say maybe it was like 19 one game and 21 the next, or 17 and 19, something like that. And then Rebecca Brunson becoming the all-time leading rebounder. That happened during a regular season game against LA, and that was awesome. They eventually, when they got a moment, stopped the game and honored her on the court. It was a nationally televised game. So that was super cool. But yeah, both those were fun moments. And, just watching some games where Maya Moore lit it up for 40 and set some of the franchise scoring, single game scoring records. Those were a ton of fun too, because it's just building. And you kind of have that number written down, just to the side of your board. And you're always keeping an eye on it to see when that moment happens, and then getting an opportunity to have fun with it and celebrate that moment.
Speaking of moments, this moment did not advance in our greatest Hornets moment bracket, and I think it is the most tragic bounce from the tournament so far, because I just don't think that certain Hornets fans appreciate how amazing it was to see someone in a Charlotte Hornets jersey do something on a national stage like that, and how much pride you felt, when something like that happened. So unfortunately it doesn't advance in our bracket, but it was just such a cool moment to see him lift the trophy on national TV.
I do like the moment. It got beat by Kemba Walker's first All-Star start in Charlotte, right? Like maybe it just got a bad draw, because I wish that would have had at least one win, but you're not, in my opinion, the Kemba Walker start in Charlotte to me, I thought was
start in Charlotte, also a little tough to say. That's a little dangerous. Start in Charlotte.
It crossed my mind, but I'm good.
All right.
I think just watching that third quarter was so much fun. It's one of those games that I hadn't thought about in a long time. I love seeing all the different guys there, but the way Glenn got cooking in that third quarter, that was super awesome to see. And just how he did it, the variety of moves, the 3-point shot. He even had one at the top of the key where he caught it down by his ankles and still pulled into that smooth motion and knocked down the 3. That was super fun to watch.
By the way, a little cleanup. I said this was one of Jordan's worst All-Star performances. He had a triple-double. So one of his lowest scoring performances, I should say, rather than one of his worst performances, because it's tough to have a worse performance when you have a triple-double. But that does speak to the greatness that is his airness. So I can't wait to watch The Last Dance. Thanks for watching this live stream, this live rewatch. We've been doing these every Friday. We'll be back again next Friday with another rewatch. Thank you to the radio voice of the Charlotte Hornets, John Foke, for joining us on this one. Thank you so much, John.
Absolutely. Great to talk to you guys again. And we're looking forward to releasing our podcast with you guys coming out on Monday. So stick around for that via Hornets.com.
That's right. Hornets.com. The podcast is called Banter from the Booth. You can subscribe everywhere, right? iTunes, Spotify, you're all over the place. So just search Banter from the Booth. And Walker, thank you as always for sitting here and taking it because you had to watch Glenn Rice.
Yeah. You
had to watch Glenn Rice embarrass you on this live feed because you were hating on him and his MVP performance. So I appreciate you having you had the pride, you had the gumption to sit there and take it.
I figured I'd get to watch some Terrell Brandon highlights and watch young KG with the excellent defense. And once KG lied, that's fine. I'll let Glenn have his moment. I was going to try to talk KG defense, but that's fine. Thank you for appreciating my time enough to just grant it to you while sitting through that torture.
We're back again Monday on Locked On Hornets. Until then, I'm Doug for Walker, John, and David Walker. Go Hornets, go America. Let's swarm Charlotte.